We're going to chat through Botswana and go through what makes Botswana such a special safari destination, why we love sending our guests to Botswana. But before we start, just a little bit about Stanley Safaris. As I said, I started the company 5 years ago. We tailor make everything we do. We get to know who our guests are, and then from there create an itinerary that is specific to their interests and expectations. We've been recognized by Travel and Leisure. We came fourth in World's Best Awards in the Safari Outfitters category. And I've been recognized by Travel and Leisure as one of their Safari A-listers for 2024, 2025, and 2026 will be announced shortly. I first went to Botswana when I was 11 years old back in 1990. And these are some of the pictures from that trip. And this is where I first fell in love with Botswana. This was raw. There were no lodges or camps, and we wouldn't have stayed at them anyway. It was my family and a few family friends. But one of my fondest memories was camping on this island in the middle of the Okavango Delta. We heard elephants one night walking across the delta, across the rivers between the different islands. And so we jumped in the Mokoro, which is that top left picture, and went to where they were. We couldn't go a little any further because it got too shallow. And so we got out and walked. And we just explored this pure wilderness on foot, without a guide, without a rifle. And we finally caught up with the elephants, and luckily they ran one way and we ran the other way. But that was my introduction to Botswana back in the early 90s. Since then, I have worked for a camp operator who had camps in Botswana and Zimbabwe. So I was up in Botswana very regularly, a few times a year, and got to explore different parts of the country at different times of the year. So Botswana is renowned as one of the top safari destinations in Africa. And so we want to know why that is. One of the reasons that Botswana is renowned for being one of the top safari destinations is just because of the pure exclusivity that you get. So this particular camp is Duba Plains in the Okavango Delta. It sits on about 30,000 acres of pure wilderness. That camp that you can see on the right is a 2-bedroom villa. Just above that, there are another 6 individual rooms. So between that, that's 12, 13, 14, 16 guests that have access to over 30,000 acres of pure wilderness. Secondly, the different variety of activities that you can do. At Stanley Safaris, we try and encourage our guests to do more than just sit in a game drive vehicle and tick off the big 5. And Botswana offers a huge variety of activities. So you can go and stay at one camp and do boating, mokoros, walking, helicopters, game drives, cultural experiences. It has so much to offer. And then thirdly, Botswana is for everybody. It is amazing for honeymoon couples. It is amazing for families with kids. It's amazing for people that just want to go and see incredible wildlife in this pure wilderness. So there is something for everybody in Botswana. And then the wildlife viewing is some of the best. You have beautiful big prides of lions. You have big herds of elephant, big herds of buffalo, amazing antelope, sable and roan, which are fairly rare in other parts of Africa. And so the wildlife viewing in Botswana is incredible. And there is something for birders. If you're a birder, the birding here is amazing. You've got the wetlands, you have grasslands and woodlands. So there really is something for everybody in Botswana. So where is Botswana? Botswana sits in southern Africa. It's got Namibia to the west, South Africa to the south, Zimbabwe to the east, and then Zambia to the north. And so it fits into that southern African region. The parts that we're mainly going to be talking about are these northern regions: Okavango Delta, the Selinda, Linyanti, Chobe, Savuti, Kwai, Moremi, Central Kalahari, Makgadi Pans, and the Nai Pans. I'm going to briefly chat about some of them. We don't sell all of these regions, and I'll tell you why when I get there. But while we're on this map, Maun and Kasane are your 2 main access points into Botswana, and then from there you head out into the regions for your safari. So we're going to start in the north with Chobe and Savuti. The Chobe National Park forms that border in the very northern part of Botswana, the northeastern side, from coming in from Kasane. It is an area we do not sell, we do not recommend, and you can see from this picture how busy it is. You have this massive big boat, you have smaller boats, It is one of the busier parks in Botswana because of its close proximity to Victoria Falls and Livingstone. You get a lot of day visitors coming in. Um, Kasane is full of campsites, backpackers, hotels, luxury lodges, and everybody accesses the park through the same area, the same gate, and everybody drives along the same road. So it is just a very busy park and not one that we recommend for our guests. You can get these very similar experiences in the Okavango Delta away from the crowds, and that's what we prefer to put our guests into. Moving down, you've got the Moremi Game Reserve and the Kwai Community Reserve. They're both on the very edge of the Okavango Delta, really beautiful locations, and it is really good for game viewing. But again, Moremi is a government-run reserve, so again, it is very busy. It kind of forms that the circuit where the self-drives, the overland trucks, the mobile safaris all leave out of Maun. They go through Moremi, through Kwai, Savuti, and end up in Chobe. And so again, it is a very busy area. And again, not one that we recommend. You can get this exact experience further away from the crowds, where you have a lot more flexibility with the activities. You can drive off road, do night drives, walking safaris, but without the crowds. Then moving to the east of Maun, you've got Naipan. This is a very arid region. It's dominated by these small waterholes that attract herds of animals that come in. And you've got oryx and springbuck, more desert-adapted animals, nice big herds of zebra, and these big elephant bulls. It is a really beautiful park, but again, it's a national park, and so you're limited. You cannot drive off-road. You cannot drive at night, so you're limited to doing morning and afternoon game drives. Again, we have better areas we can send you to that offers a very similar experience, but away from the crowds. And that goes the same with the Central Kalahari Game Reserve. These are oryx and springbuck, so more desert-adapted animals. When I talk about the Magadi Pans later on, that is more of a private area, but offers a very similar experience. Now we're getting into the areas that, as a company, Stanley Safaris promotes. This is where we enjoy sending our guests. These are now the private conservancies. The Cylinder Conservancy, as an example, has 3 camps on it. And we did a calculation that the number of guests for the size of the concession was the equivalent of only allowing 22 tourists into New York City at any one time. So as you can see here, you've got these amazing sightings all to yourself. You don't have the crowds that you get when you are in the national parks. And the Linyanti and Cylinder regions are north of the Okavango Delta, and they are primarily land-based activities. So big focus here on game drives, walking safaris, helicopters. Some of them do have boating, but not as good as what you can get in the Okavango Delta. Then we come to the world famous Okavango Delta. This is the Okavango River that comes in from Angolan highlands, hits the Kalahari sands of Botswana, and just forms this amazing oasis in the desert, effectively. And this is what people come here for. You can see from this picture the variety of landscapes and habitats. You've got woodlands, you've got grasslands, you've got the wetlands. And because of that variety of habitats, you get an amazing variety of wildlife. And this is the primary wildlife-focused area that everybody comes to Botswana for. And then for me, a little bit of a hidden gem are the Magadi Pans. So this offers that more desert landscape. As you can see, it's a little bit more arid and contrast, completely different to the Okavango Delta, and so works very well in conjunction with the Okavango Delta. But you get very different animals here. You've got these meerkats, habituated meerkats. You've got your oryx and springbuck. You've got massive big herds of zebra that come for the sweet grasses after the rains, and it just offers a completely different experience. So it works really well with the Okavango Delta. These are the main areas of Botswana where we send most of our guests, where most people come to see the wildlife. And what is amazing about this whole northern part of Botswana is there's very, very few fences. And so the wildlife has free roam. They can migrate from the north to the south, depending on water, depending on food, and they're not bumping into villages. They're not bumping into people other than the few safari lodges that are out there. Botswana is a very seasonal destination. Your rainy season and your dry season dictates the type of animals that you're going to see, dictates the type of landscape that you're going to see, the different activities that you can do. As you can see in this picture, Botswana is very, very flat. So even during the rainy season, you get these cells, these storm cells that move through. It rains for about half an hour, 45 minutes, and then it often clears up to nice blue skies. But it does bring this beautiful, vivid green color. But we're going to run through the seasons very quickly because it would determine, depending on what your interests are, as to what time of year you would travel to Botswana. It's very important to understand the flooding season of the Okavango Delta. So your main rainy season in Botswana and the catchment area in Angola is between November and the end of March. So that's when most of the rains happen in Botswana. In the catchment area, the rains fall in the mountains. They flow down into the Okavango River. They come across Namibia, Caprivi Strip, and into Botswana. So from January, February, March, the water and the floods have started to push through. By March, they're reaching the top of the Okavango Delta. April, May, and June, the floods are at their highest. And then from July, they start receding back until you're getting to September, October time when those flood waters have completely left. So the flooding of the Okavango Delta is opposite to the rainy season. It's not the rains that happen in Botswana that fills up the Okavango Delta. It's the rains that land in the catchment area in Angola that pushes down and forces that flood to push all the way down towards Maun. And what that means is during the dry season, which is from April through to the end of October, your flood and Okavango Delta is at its highest. And that means then that you have more water activities. You've got kind of different landscape that also then dictates what the wildlife is doing. So to December to March, as I said, is the rainy season. So from this image, you can see how beautiful and green everything is. But the flood waters haven't quite reached here yet. So the rains cause everything to turn green. You have the migrant birds that come in from Europe and Asia. All of your antelopes start giving birth towards the end of November and December, to coincide for the amount of food that is here for them. In this particular picture, you can see that coming from the bottom left corner going up the center, that is a floodplain. So when that water and the floods come in, all of that will be covered in water. In April and November, so the 2 months kind of that are shoulder seasons, you've had a bit of rain, so the grass is still green in the foreground, but in the background you can see that the grass is already starting to die off, and now we're moving into the dry season. November is the end of the dry season and the start of the rainy season. As we get into May through to August, this is now peak dry season. It is peak flood season. So you can see how much water there is. You've got a beautiful herd of elephants in the middle there. The animals have adapted to living in the semi-aquatic landscape. And so they move between these islands. You can see an island there on the left-hand side. And the animals have learned to adapt and have moved between these islands. And so choosing the right camps at this time of the year is very important. If you're in a water-only camp, your main focus is going to be on water activities, which will limit the amount of wildlife you can see. Whereas if you're in a water and dry camp, you have access to both land and water. And that may be in the form of big islands that they can go and do game drives on, or the northern part of the delta where it is primarily land-based, but you still have access to the waterways of the Okavango Delta. And then as those floods push back, as all the pans dry up, your herds of buffalo and elephant have started to move to your permanent water holes, your permanent water sources, the Linyanti River, the Chobe River, the Okavango Delta, the Selinda Spillway, and you get massive big herds of buffalo and big herds of elephant. It is very dry, very dusty, and October can get exceptionally hot. So if you can stand that heat, then this is the prime wildlife viewing time of the year. Moving into the Magadi Pans seasons, You have a wet and a dry season as well. And again, that determines the landscape and determines the activities you can do. This picture here just gives you a really good perspective of how big the salt pans are and how different they are to the Okavango Delta. But during the rainy season of November through to April, all of the grasses in the Magadi pans that have been completely dry and dead, they now spring to life. And that grass, those sweet grasses, now attract thousands and thousands of zebra. The zebra move in from the northern part of the Okavango Delta, from Savuti, from Chobe, from Moremi, from Naipan, and they move into this Magadi Pans area. I think there's about 60,000 zebra that move into the area during these wet months, and they all come for this very sweet grass that is sprouted after the rains. A lot of the zebra do stay because a few of the water holes have been pumped. So some of the zebras move back off as it starts to dry up, but a lot of the zebras do remain in the Magadi Pans area. And then May through to October is then the dry season. This allows you to get out onto the pans to enjoy these amazing sunsets over the pans and sundowners, your sleep out, your quad biking on the pans. And so it does offer a completely different experience in that sense. As we said earlier, Botswana is incredible for experiences. There is just so much to do in the different areas. And so we're going to chat through that very quickly now. The primary activity and the best way for your game viewing is on a game drive, is on a traditional safari. In Botswana, in the private conservancies, you can do both day and night game drives. So that offers the ability to see your nocturnal animals. Your leopards and lions are a lot more active at night, your hyena, genets, things like that. Whereas during the day, in the mornings and afternoons, when you do your traditional daily game drives, that gives you the best opportunity to see your wild dogs, your elephant, your antelope, and things like that. Again, here you can just see the exclusivity that you get, being able to have these sorts of experiences on your own, being able to drive off-road and get you closer to where the animals are. Mokoros, like I did back in the early 90s, this is a traditional way to get around the Okavango Delta. This is a dugout canoe. Your guide stands at the back. He has this long pole that he puts on the bottom of the delta and pushes you quietly along. It's a very, very peaceful way to experience the Okavango Delta. You're getting to see the birds, the insects and things like that live in the reeds. You've got these really beautiful painted reed frogs. If you're very lucky, you'll get to see a sitatunga, which is a very aquatic antelope. I've never seen one in my life. So they are very rare, but they live in the reeds, and being on a Mokoro offers you a great opportunity to see one of those. And then boating, as I said, in Chobe, you have plenty boats on that river. Out here in the Okavango Delta, because of the concessions, the private concessions, you get a lot of this sort of experience to yourself. And specifically the big elephant bulls, they love to come into the water and eat the reeds. And so often in places like this, you are getting those elephants coming across the rivers, swimming across the channels, spending their time in the water. And so you can have this experience that you saw up in Chobe, but away from the crowds. And this is the sort of stuff that we enjoy sending our guests to. And then out in the private conservancies, walking safaris. I love a walking safari. We encourage all of our guests to try and do a walking safari at least once during their time in Africa. When you are sitting in a vehicle in the morning, afternoon, it gets a bit much. And so having the ability to get out on foot, track big game. But for me, a walking safari is more about the finer details of the bush, the things that you generally miss when you're in a vehicle. So it's things like the tracks and signs left behind by animals, the insects, the medicinal uses of plants. The guides have generally grown up in these areas. And so we'll tell you stories of how their grandmother used specific plants for different ailments and things like that. So it's a very educational experience and just gives you a different perspective of the wilderness. And then helicopters. Botswana, because of its vast size, the Okavango Delta and the Linyanti region, helicopter safari is one of the best ways to get up, get to see big game from the air. As you can see, there's no doors on this helicopter. And so the pilots will fly over the whole delta, give you an aerial perspective of what the delta looks like from the panhandle all the way through the floodplains, and very respective of the wildlife. They know the certain animals that are nervous and scared of the helicopters, and so they go higher and avoid. Whereas these buffaloes, you can see, are fairly relaxed, and you can get quite low. And then one of the cool things is they will actually land on an island somewhere, have a picnic, lunch, or a drink on this island in the middle of the Okavango Delta with absolutely no one else around you. So it's really a great way to see the Okavango Delta, and I highly, highly recommend that you include one helicopter experience in your stay, specifically in the Okavango Delta. Cultural experiences, a little bit hard to come by in Botswana just because of the vastness of the wilderness. But in the Magadi Pans, the 3 camps that are there, they work with local San Bushmen who then take the guests out on a educational cultural walk, showing the guests how they find water in the desert, how they find food and survive in this fairly harsh environment. So it just gives you a bit more of a insight into the incredible lives of the San Bushmen. Horse safaris. So this is in the Magadi Pans, dry season. You can see how many zebra are still around. Different levels of horse safari experiences in the Magadi Pans. You can do it as an hour experience. In the Okavango Delta, there are more hardcore horse safaris where you go out every morning and every afternoon. It is a camp that is specifically doing horseback safaris, and you're getting to ride through the Okavango Delta. That is for more experienced riders because you are riding for extended periods of time, and you are potentially coming up against big game. Out in the Magadi Pans, you explore the Pans on quad bikes. You do incredible sleep outs on the Pans, but the quad bikes give you this opportunity to get out into the Pans and see the vastness of the Salt Pans. And then more and more people are looking for this sort of sleep out experience. In Botswana, there is very, very little light pollution. And so sleeping under the stars for a night and having this as your view is absolutely mind-blowing. And there's different ways you can do it. This is a very comfortable platform. You've got a bathroom. The mattress is under the stars, so that's what you're sleeping on. And then in the Magadi Pans, it's a little bit more rustic. They have a proper bed on the Pans, and you're sleeping under the most incredible stars. I've been there where there's been no moon whatsoever, and the stars are so bright that it still casts a shadow on the ground just from the stars. Very quickly, going to just run through some of our preferred camps. I'm not going to go through them all, but for those of you that know Stanley Safaris, you know that we only work with boutique, privately owned camps. We stay away from the big corporate hotel chains, 4-star, 5-star, 5-star plus. We are a luxury operator. And there are certain things that I look for when we're looking at who we partner with. So commitment to local conservation and community is key. We need to know that the money you are spending to come to Africa is going into the right places. It's staying in Africa and helping conserve these incredible places. Guiding is very key. I used to be a guide when I finished school, and so I know the importance of guiding. And so we look at the guides that are employed at the camps, their guides training, annual guides training, and the commitment that they make to their guides, because the guide at the end of the day is the most important person on your trip. And then location is key. As I said earlier, we don't sell the national parks where you're restricted in the activities you can do, the times you can be out, and the number of vehicles that are out and about. So we stick to the private conservancies where you're getting the sightings to yourself. There's a limit to 3 vehicles per sighting, and those vehicles are off typically from the same camp that you're staying at. And so you're getting a much more exclusive experience and at a much slower pace. You're not being rushed off sightings. In the Okavango Delta, you've got these water camps, you've got land and water camps, and you've got land-only camps. So again, it's very important to know what you want to get out of your experience. We prefer putting our guests in the combination of land and water camps, where you have access to incredible land for wildlife, but you also have access to the water for mokoras and boating. And so a few of these camps, you've got Sable Alley in the top left, you've got Sitatunga Camp on the top right, Tuludi bottom left, and then Karangoma bottom right. But I think from these pictures, you can see the level of accommodation that you can get in Botswana, and there are different levels, but the pure wilderness that these properties are in. There's no fences, so the animals move freely. You're often sitting on your deck. You might have an elephant wander past. There's hippos in the lagoons, lions or wild dogs coming through the camp. So it really is in the wilderness. You're in the wilds of Botswana in these camps. As we said earlier, the Cylinder concession has 3 camps. You've got Zarafa, you have Cylinder Explorers, which is the top left, a little bit more of a rustic, authentic, on-the-ground experience. You have Zarafa, which only has 4 tents, Relay and Chateau, so the food there is amazing. Cylinder, bottom left, has just been rebuilt recently, and again, looking amazing, and on the higher end of the category. When we talk about these camps, it's important to know pricing. And Botswana is known as one of the most expensive safari destinations in Africa. And a lot of that comes down to the exclusivity that you get. As we said, the Cylinder concession here is the equivalent of only allowing 22 people into New York City at any one time. And so a lot of the time you're paying for that exclusivity. And these camps range from $1,700 per person per night to over $3,000 per person per night. And that's during peak season, which is June through to October. If you travel in shoulder season, then that price comes down. If you travel in low season, it comes down even further. But again, it's important to know that those prices include all of your safaris, your game drives, walking, canoeing, boating, all of your drinks, all of your meals. So when you're there, there's very little that you need to pay for, other than if you want a spa treatment, if you want a premium bottle of wine or champagne, or if you want to buy something from the curio shop. I just want to touch on this particular property. It kind of goes back to the days of the 1990s when I was in Botswana and tracking those elephants on foot through the Okavango Delta. Beagle Expeditions is an exclusive use camp. It's a very rustic camp. It's on the ground. You have nice tents, walk-in tents, proper beds. You have an ensuite bathroom with a bucket shower and a camp toilet. But what the luxury that you get here is having 30,000 acres to yourself. It's an exclusive use camp, so just one family or one group would go in at any one time. And that means you have complete flexibility on the activities you do. There's a big focus here on walking safaris, so going and tracking those elephants like I did back in the 90s, going on your game drives, taking Mokoros out into the Delta. The only way to get there is by helicopter. And so you can then take the helicopter, use the helicopter to access more remote places, to then do a walking safari into camp, stop for a picnic like these guys at the bottom right are doing. But what we are finding more and more now is more people, more guests are looking for what I call this luxury adventure, where you're doing these very rustic camps, this on-the-ground raw experience, and then you're going and staying at a luxury camp afterwards. And you're mixing the adventure with the luxury experience. And we're finding more and more guests doing that. It's something I've been pushing for the last 5 years. It's something I love to do. And so it's nice to start seeing more and more of our guests requesting this on-the-ground raw experience. Moving into the Magadi Pans, there's only 3 camps here that we use. You've got Jack's Camp, which is the big picture. This is the luxury option. It's on the grasslands overlooking the Magadi Pans. The top right is Camp Kalahari. That's more the entry-level property on the conservancy, on the concession. And then the bottom right is Sand Camp. Sand Camp is actually on the Pans itself, so that's the view you have from the tents. And Sand Camp closes down during the rainy seasons because it is on the Pans. So that's just a few of the examples of the camps that we use. There are a few more as well that we have access to and that we work with, but those are just some of our preferred options. Just very briefly, logistics, knowing the size of these concessions, knowing the size of the areas to get between these camps. There's very few road networks. When these camps order food, it's either flown in one of these little planes, or it's put on a truck, and that truck takes 2 to 3 days to get to the camp from Maun. So the best way to get into the camps is by these light aircraft. They're called Cessna Caravans. They're 12-seaters. And they work like a bus. They will leave from Maun. They will stop at one camp, drop people off, pick more people up, carry on to the next camp, drop some people off, pick more people up, and it continues like that. So if you're starting in Maun and you've got a property that is a bit further into the Delta, you could stop 2 or 3 times before you get to your camp. Because of that, the distances are quite short. You are flying quite low. So again, you are getting an aerial view of the Okavango Delta. And the flights are generally quite short. The longest is probably about 45 minutes, but they're usually 15 to 20-minute hops. The schedules, I get asked this quite often. I do not know what time the flights are leaving. So Mac Air, who's the biggest operator in Botswana, they will look at everybody's movements on every single day, and they will then set the schedule 24 hours before. And so they will then talk to the camps you're in. They will talk to the manager. The manager will come and talk to you the night before, and they will say, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, your flight tomorrow is leaving at 11 o'clock. Please make sure your bags are packed by 9 o'clock. You're going to be leaving at 10 so that you're at the airstrip for 10:30 to make sure there's no animals on the airstrip, and then your flight is leaving at 11. So that is how it works in Botswana. We do not have any control over the timings. Mac Air sets that schedule depending on arrivals into Maun and who else needs to go where. And that is it. Before I end, again, it's very important looking at this airplane, that gray piece underneath the plane, that is the luggage storage. So it is very important that when you are traveling in Botswana, there is a luggage limit of 44 pounds per person. That includes your hand luggage. And this needs to be packed into soft-sided bags so that it can be pushed into these very small compartments underneath the plane, because that is where everybody's luggage goes. So it is very important to know that. You do not need to pack lots of clothing. A lot of the camps will do washing. So you can wash clothes as you're going along. They obviously do it for you. So you can pack light. Just make sure you've got good cameras to take your pictures. And that is it. Hopefully, you've been able to answer or ask some questions. I couldn't see the screen, so I don't know what questions have been asked. But if there is anybody that has any questions.
So, Shaun, can we open up a Q&A session? Looks like the chat was turned off.
Okay. What I can do is unmute everybody, if that will help. And then if people want to talk, if that might work better. So I'll just unmute everybody. And if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. And I'll try my best to answer them. I'm just unmuting everybody one at a time. Okay, there we go. Everyone should be unmuted now. You should be able to unmute yourself if anybody has any questions.
Well, actually, Shaun, I have a question. You talked about the difference in seasonality, and different things happening at different times of the year in the Delta. Now, one of the things you mentioned was that, for example, in October, if you're comfortable with it being dry and dusty, is very dramatic for, say, photographs and game viewing. But I would imagine that at different times of the year, you have different cycles of life happening. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah. So typically at the rainy season, end of November, when the proper rains start, the impala, which is the most common antelope in Botswana, they start to have their babies. And that happens over about a 2-week period towards the end of November, early December. So you now have thousands more baby antelope around. And that can make for some dramatic predator viewing because the predators take advantage of the easy prey. That rainy season as well is you get a lot of migrant birds coming in, so from Europe. So really beautiful time of year for birders. As you go through the dry season, your herds of animals start to get bigger. at your main water sources, your Okavango Deltas and places like that. So the later in the dry season, that's where that September, October works really well for the big herds. Around March, April time, your impala are rutting, so the males are fighting to keep the females in their territory and start mating. So again, quite an exciting time as the males are fighting. There's a lot of noise and dust, and again, the males are so preoccupied with fighting that a lot of the predators then take advantage of that. Going into kind of your September, October, it can be quite a hard time of the year for the animals. There's very little food around. And so things like your elephant and buffalo in particular that are very reliant on food and water, they do start to become quite skinny during some very heavy drought seasons, which we had quite a few years ago. A lot of those animals then, the weaker animals then die. So yeah, it is a cycle of life, but that just gives you a bit of an idea of the different times of year.
Fantastic, thank you. Now, Brett just asked, are you able to share the presentation, Shaun?
Yes, yeah. So I was recording this. At the end of this, Emil, who's our social media guy, will put it on YouTube and put it nicely there so anybody can then watch it back.
Fantastic, thank you.
Hey, Shaun, Mark Ott here. As far as I've read all the websites for the Botswana and for vaccines, is there anything additional other than what they have on their state website?
No, so there's nothing required. There's no requirement for vaccines to get into Botswana. So the vaccines and medication that you take is completely up to you. I cannot give you medical advice, but it is a malaria area, so you need to be aware of that. Specifically, if you're going into the rainy season, there's a lot more water around. So it is a malaria area. I do warn my guests about taking malaria precautions. Just be very careful with that because it can make you ill while you're traveling. So go and speak to your doctor and make sure that you're getting the right malaria precautions that don't make you ill. And there are different ones that you can take. But no, aside from that, there are no requirements to get into Botswana in terms of health.
And then to buy things, just whatever the Botswana currency is.
Yeah, so the Botswana currency is the pula. That's the local currency. But in terms of these tourist areas, everything is handled in US dollars. So all the rates are in US dollars. All your courier shops and things like that are in US dollars. There's very little exposure, if I can put it that way, to local Botswana life. You'll fly into Maun Airport. You'll be met in Maun Airport, and they'll tell you what time your flight to the camp is. You may have to wait an hour and a half. There's a cafe across the road that you can go and sit at, but you can use your card or pay in dollars there. In the courier shops at the camps, again, they accept card and US dollars. If you're coming through Kasane or Victoria Falls, Livingston, then you have a few more opportunities to buy local things. But they're so used to having international tourists coming through that they're very well versed in accepting US dollars. So yeah, if you want to buy stuff locally, have small US dollars on hand to be able to do that.
Okay, thank you.
So, speaking of having US dollars, what about tipping?
Yeah, so tipping it's up to you. It has become expected nowadays, but tipping is in US dollars. Again, the lodges, the guides, the staff there are used to dealing in US dollars. So tipping in US dollars cash is absolutely fine. And generally, you would tip your guide separately. And then there will be a communal tip box in the lodge in the camp where you would then tip the general staff. That then gets pooled together. The manager looks and sees who was working on what days and then distributes those tips between the rest of the staff.
Thank you.
Shaun,
Hi.
quick question. First,
Yes.
we've been dealing with Ings, and she has been absolutely fabulous.
Perfect. I'll let her know.
Oh, she's been absolutely fabulous. We're headed there in the first 3 weeks of December, and we're headed to the Pans, the Delta, and Chobe. What can we expect for weather? Because I was a little confused by your earlier presentation.
So early December is going to be the start of the rainy season. So everything is going to be nice and green. You're going to have lots of baby antelope around, lots of baby buffalo and things like that. It is going to be hot. So 35 degrees Celsius during the day. I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit, Ray. I don't know if you can convert that into Fahrenheit. It does cool down in the evenings. When we talk about rains in Botswana is a very, very flat country. They don't have any mountain ranges. And so there's nothing to keep the storm cells and the rain clouds in one place. And so you literally have this rain cloud that will move through. It will rain for half an hour, 45 minutes, and then it dries up. I've been there where we've seen this rain cloud coming, and it literally rains on one side of the road where it kind of gets a bit wet, and on the other side of the road is completely bone dry. So it very rarely rains for extended periods of time. That rain cools things down. It cleans the air. So as you saw in the picture from September, October, there's a lot of dust in the air, smoke from fires and things like that. That rain completely cleans the air out. And so you have very blue sky, you have very dramatic cloud formations, and nice clean air. So for photography, it's fantastic. So yeah, it's a nice time of year. You're going to have to work a little bit harder for your wildlife. The animals are still there. Your predators are territorial, so they don't move, but they have more place to hide because the grass and the bush is a bit thicker. So you have to work a little bit harder for your wildlife, but it is still there. And generally, we find that when you come across a lion or leopard, you spend a bit more time with it as opposed to kind of seeing it moving off to go and find something else.
Shaun, the temperature is going to be ranging anywhere from 60 to 95. And one thing that's also important, I think, that even during the warm seasons, where it's can be rather hot in the middle of the day, when you start off your game drives early in the morning, you'll still need to layer up because it'll be cool early in the morning.
Yeah. And when it rains, it actually is quite cold because it's cumulonimbus clouds. So the clouds are massive. And so you have these very cold raindrops that come down, and it drops the temperature very quickly. And so even during the day, if once that rain shower has passed, it's still relatively cold, and a fleece is going to be needed, even at that time of the year.
Okay, well, where we are, it's going to be negative 30 below wind chill Fahrenheit tonight. So I think we can deal with that. I do have one other question.
Yes.
I have long lenses and am used to traveling internationally with them. But when we're in the on the game safaris, are we looking at using a monopod? Are we looking at using bean bags? What is the best way to work with long lenses?
Yeah, so generally the vehicles are open. There's an armrest. So I also I love my photography, and I have a nice big lens. So I generally rest it on the armrest, whether that's with a bean bag or just on the armrest as it is. I find that a monopod is a bit more restrictive, whereas having the ability to move around at different and look at different angles, for me is better. But yeah, a lot of the camps also, their armrests actually extend up, so they're at a higher level for you to then rest your camera or your lens on. So yeah, quite a few of them are adapted for photography.
Thank you, Shaun. I much appreciate it.
No problem. Does anybody else have any other questions?
Shaun, Just wondering at any of the camps, are there any problems with accommodating any food issues or allergies, dairy specifically in our case?
Yeah, it's a good question. So we do get asked that quite a lot, and we do get a wide range of dietary requirements. So typically with us, we get all of that information beforehand, send it out to the camp so that they can prepare ahead of time. But no, so the answer is yes, they can accommodate all different types of dietary requirements. They are very well catered to that, whether it's vegan, celiac, vegetarian, whatever it is. So yes, they can cater to all of that, as long as we give them pre-warning, which we do. We get all of that information from our guests quite a way before they travel, and that gets sent off. If there is anything in particular, we highlight it to the camp so that they are aware of kind of specific dietary requests.
Thank you.
A lot of the stuff comes in from Maun, comes in from Johannesburg in South Africa. So we have access to all sorts, all the different milk types and almond milk and all that sort of thing. So the camps, they can cater to all of that. Does anybody else have any questions? If anybody wants to email me, my email is Shaun, SHAUN, @stanley-safaris.com. Please feel free to email me if you have any questions, want to look at anything, want to chat through anything, then please, feel free to email me, and we can then jump on a call if you want to chat, or if you want to just stay on email. So feel free to do that as well.
Thank you very much,
Thank you, Shaun.
Perfect. Well, again, thank you everybody for joining me. It is now 1:30 in the morning. I'm going to be going to bed. I hope everybody found that useful. I am going to be doing these hopefully once a month. We'll do a new destination next month. So if you are interested in learning about different parts of Africa, then please join me. And hopefully I would have figured out the technical issue of sharing my screen at that point. But yes, thank you everybody again. Have a fantastic day. Where it is cold, please stay warm. I've been seeing the news of all the snow in New York and other parts of Africa, other parts of the US. So please, stay warm, stay safe, and we look forward to welcoming you out here to Africa and Botswana very soon.